Welcome to the Content Strategy Insights podcast, where accomplished content strategy experts share their wisdom with our friends in the content community. We talk with professionals who work across the span of content strategy, from small businesses to big enterprises, from content design to content marketing, from solo consultancies to huge agencies. Our mission is to democratize content strategy, to make its principles and practices accessible to everyone. And now, here's your host, Larry Swanson.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode number 40 of the Content Strategy Insights podcast. I'm really happy today to have with us Crystal Taggart. Crystal's an entrepreneur and a data scientist, and also more recently the founder of Elless AI, a company that focuses on AI. Well, I'll let Crystal tell you a little bit more about what she does there. Welcome, Crystal.
Thank you for having me, Larry. So I am super excited about what we're working on. So our mission is to enable small business to take advantage of AI technologies. So we think that SMBs have to make the most of every marketing dollar, and we provide the science to maximize their time and budget with easy and affordable AI solutions with our open source platform.
Cool. Well, that's why I saw Crystal speak at WordCamp Phoenix a few weeks ago, and I immediately ran up after her talk because I'm like, wow, are we really at the point where AI is no longer just a buzzword and a thing that only enterprises get to do? Is it actually well understood enough and practicable enough that even us little businesses can work with it? So it sounds like that's the case. Well, let me start just at the highest level about content and content strategy. Have you thought much about just at that level, like the implications for content creation, planning, management, all that stuff with AI?
Yeah, so I think that we are really in a changing world, right? So to me, the best use case of AI is personalization, right? So if you rewind the clock, 25 years, the sales and marketing process was about being personal with your customers, right? With automation and digitization, it's actually gotten away from that, right? Like everything's a commodity. Everything is a plug and play. Everything is kind of you fit into this box, right? So we're focused on eyeball marketing today. And so what AI gives us the capability to do again is to actually create personalized experiences based off of what a person needs, not what is going to grab the most attention based off of the numbers game. So to me, that's super exciting about how the world is changing. And it's going to be interesting, the things that kind of happen as a result of that. Like we're around the corner from personalized websites and personalized content experiences. So what's going to happen with Google if they're trying to index content that changes based off of whoever is coming to the site, right? So it's kind of an exciting time to be here. And, for marketers, if they're not already adopting these types of techniques or researching into them, they're going to see rapid changes very, very quickly.
Yeah, you've already scared me, and I'm scared on behalf of all my small business friends and friends who run small agencies, in the sense that like one of the biggest challenges is from the WordPress world is like all those agency guys, folks, they struggle a lot with content and how to get it. And now it's like, oh yeah, and you'll need infinitely larger amounts so you can personalize it. And there are huge implications. You just kind of hinted in there, like SEO and other established marketing things. So, but I gather from what you're saying that we're at a point where we're small. Tell me, I guess specifically how small businesses can take advantage of AI.
Yeah, so to me, AI is a process, right? So it's not a plug and play. It's actually kind of a mindset of how you operate as a business, right? And I would argue that small businesses don't invest the time to become a data-driven organization, right? So if you take a step back and look through kind of what that means, it's really about creating some research up front, which is what you do, right? So researching up front what your customers want, what they're responding to, what your competitors are doing, and then creating a strategy around that, right? And most companies don't do that. They just kind of throw stuff on the wall and see what sticks, right? Or they come up with hypothesis. So to me, if you take a step back and you say, okay, let's go analyze the data and go see what's actually working, right? And we can go build on that. That's kind of the first level of AI, because what you're doing in that scenario is you're segmenting your customers, who's good, who's bad, taking that data, what are they interested in? What are they looking at on your website? Which, we all have that data. It's hard to get to. We're actually working on solving that problem, making that easy to get to. But if you invest the time in doing that analysis, then you can see what types of problems your customer is looking to solve. And then you can create more content around those specific problems, really focusing on the best customers for your business.
Right, that's interesting because I don't think I'm alone in having had moments or episodes where I've been frustrated with Google Analytics and other tools to just go in there and like, great, what do I do with this information? And so so is that, I assume that's just maybe one data set that you would operate from to come up with these sort of tools, research tools that say, oh, and if you look at this data, clearly these people are interested in that, because there's a lot in there. You can segment by demographics and other factors. Can you give me an example, I guess, of how you're doing that now?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. So we actually looked at integrating to Google Analytics to get the data out, right? Like almost every single website has Google Analytics. And the limited amount of information they give you is shocking, right? So it's kind of broad strokes of the truth, which is, hey, you had 1,000 people or 5,000 people hit your homepage. They went to these other 2 screens and left. They came in from these sources. And those are fine, right? But the thing that we're missing and the thing that we're working on is being able to tie that information to an actual customer, right? So being able to say, this customer came in and looked at these specific pages, so you know what they actually kind of care about. And you can do that if you do a lot of coding with Google Tag Manager and things like that, which is fine. The problem is that there's browsers such as DuckDuckGo that are coming along that are blocking those Google injections, right? So you start getting more anonymous data coming through. So, to me, if you have a website that people are going to, this is kind of part of the problems with kind of what's happening with the GDPR and the European Union rules, is that, if somebody comes to your website, you have a right to know what they looked at and where they traveled through your site, right? And the GDPR thing seems to think that your website should be private, right? And so, so what we're doing is we're actually tracing back that data back to a specific customer, so you could see, hey, this customer came in, they looked at these pages, they signed up on your contact form, or no, they didn't, and you can go make decisions on how to adjust your content based off of those trends. And so, with that, I think, you're able to make better content strategy decisions based off of what's working, as opposed to kind of the broad brush strokes of what Google Analytics gives you. The other piece of this is there's so much data out there that's so inexpensive to get to that, if you're not investing in that, it's really kind of a shame. So if you're doing kind of AdWords strategies or things like that, and you're driving people to fill out your content form, there is companies like, one of the ones that I love is Pipl, P-I-P-L, and for 5 to 15 cents, you can learn more about your customer. So if you're spending $1 to get your customer through the door, and then you don't spend the 5 cents to go learn more about who they are and what they're about, it's like, it's not, you're not doing yourself any favors. They're just another person. There's free resources out there where you can do amazing things if you can get somebody's zip code. Zip code is one of the best socioeconomic demographic indicators out of any piece of data that you have, and that data is available for free.
Right, and that's one, because a lot of what you just said gets into privacy issues and stuff, but people being aggregated at a zip code level, that's a nice anonymizing device that still gives you as a marketer plenty of information to work with.
Yeah,
Are you
absolutely.
balancing that throughout all this, kind of balancing those privacy concerns with your, because you're a data scientist, you're like in that, with that hat on, you just want more and more and more, right?
Yeah,
Or,
so to me, I think that demographics are key for understanding your customer, right? So I use the zip code. I have a customer now who we looked at their data, and we found that people who made over $60,000, people who had 2 kids, people who were interested in one product, they were more likely to be a good customer. If they targeted people who were under those demographics, they were likely to cancel, or they were likely to have a bad account. And so I think that you have an obligation to use that data to your advantage. I think the problem is that if you start racially biasing people, that's a problem. There's
Mhm.
been a number of different issues with companies like Pokemon, companies like LinkedIn, um, who are racially profiling or gender profiling based off of the data that they had. So I think that you have an obligation to use it. I think you just have to monitor it to go make sure that it's working for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it occurs to me that could be a whole episode just talking about those issues. But I want to get back to more the practical
Yeah.
applications of this. For example, one of the things you're an expert on is chatbots, and I think that's probably like the most accessible thing to people now about AI. I think is they interact with a chatbot, they kind of know what it is.
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit more about the application of that in your work.
Yeah, so I think that chatbots are fantastic because they're a new way to grab the attention of your customers, right? Or your potential customers. I think that they're a new way to engage. I think the realities of most of the technology solutions out there, the chatbots today are pretty dumb, right? So they
Mhm.
are really just picking up keywords and then answering a reply. And that's, roughly how 98% of the chatbots work out there today. So I think if you're going to deploy a chatbot, again, those technologies kind of work, they're okay. Um, but the thing to do is you really have to monitor the responses and the interaction. So you have to actually invest the time in researching what is actually happening with your chatbot. Because if not, you can really get into some areas where you're getting unintended consequences. Microsoft had an issue where when their chatbots went wild, and
Oh, I remember that. It
it
instantly became a racist troll or something, right?
within 24 hours, it became a racist, Nazi-loving, feminist-hating troll. Yes.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's well that, and as you talk about that, I think that like it seems like, but we're at a point where you can buy a chatbot platform or something like that. So I think a lot of my listeners are like smaller to medium-sized businesses who are likely to, and not that they're all discerning consumers as well, but there is this thing of like when a new technology comes along, it's like, oh, you got to have this, you got to have this chatbot. Can you talk a little bit about like what you would look for if you're looking to add that kind of functionality to your web presence? How would you vet possible solutions?
Um, so when I'm looking at solutions, I I'm a huge fan of open source, right? So I always look to see if there's an open source solution out there. There's one that we're actually going to integrate our platform into. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But basically what they've done with their chatbot is it's a little bit smarter because it's actually using AI in the background.
Mhm.
Um, but to leverage that solution, you've got to be a little more tech savvy to do it. So you need a programmer to go do that. For the average person, there's a couple different solutions out there that are easy to manage yourself. Um, so like Flow.io is one where they've made it easy to create kind of step-by-step chatbot processes. So you create kind of the keywords, you create the conversation and the responses, but they've made it super simple to go through and really kind of make it so that you can create new experiences with your customers and answer questions. Um, I would be hesitant to use that type of technology unless you're really going to invest some time in it. Where a lot of companies start is they start with the dumb chatbot where you're actually talking to a person. So you can start with those, and those are plug and play technologies. you can take that log data, go reverse engineer it to go say, what are the common issues and questions that we're getting, and then go implement your automated chatbot. So that's the way that I would go about implementing that. And there's dozens of different plug and play chat solutions or messaging solutions out there that you can implement.
Right, that gets into like content creation in an AI world. Like you're doing, it's more like you're creating that, what do they call it, learning sets or something in machine learning, where the set of data that in a real artificial intelligence or machine learning environment where it's actually learning to do new stuff. But this is simpler than that. This is just like a simple basic conversation level bot that can answer common questions about your product or services or whatever it is you're doing on your site, right?
Yeah, so that's actually what a lot of companies are doing, is they're taking their existing chat log history and they're creating their training data set.
Okay.
And so that training data set is what AI uses in order to predict an answer. So if we take a step back and talk about like what AI is, basically it's a complex math formula that predicts an answer, right? So if somebody says this key phrase or this combination of words, here's the right answer based off of your chat log history, right? So that's fundamentally how all of these AI programs work. Every single application, it's just a statistical probability that this is the right answer.
Got it. Okay. Hey, so chatbots is one application. There's also, when we were getting ready to figuring out the scope of this, you talked about sort of predictive things that you can do, and I guess this probably goes back to the server logs and learning about your customers and stuff. But tell me more about that. Like, what kinds of predictive activities you can do with AI?
Yeah, so I think to me one of the best uses of AI is really kind of churn prediction. So predicting whether somebody is going to become a customer or not. You can predict based off of all of these different attributes. It can be their demographics, can be their activity, can be their engagement across all of your different touch points with them. Are they opening your emails? Are they going back to your website? How many times have they viewed your website? All of these different data points can be used to triangulate what's your probability that they're going to cancel or churn. So that's one of my favorite ones. That's one of the easiest ones to implement. So that's why I like it so much, is it's just a simple way to get a really productive introduction into leveraging AI as part of your business. Because once you have that type of data, then you can actually transform the customer relationship, right? So you can say, hey, we noticed, that you're not engaged. Here's some things to help you move you along the funnel, right? And so you take those different data points. So you say, okay, we're going to push you into the next phase of the funnel. And you can start A/B testing those different responses and then figuring out statistically which one's likely to work based off of that customer segment, right? So you take the power of what AI can do with your customer segment. So you use AI to say, here's my customer segments. They have these types of attributes. And then you couple that to how they're responding to all of your different forms of engagement. And then you've got a powerful tool that can actually help you drive real business decisions, not just kind of shoot in the dark and hope to serve everyone with everything that you're building. So
right, and even as you're implementing that, you're like, well, I can picture two scenarios. Like, well, let's start with the less engaged one because it's low risk, and we'll see if we can grab them in. But the higher impact might be figuring out the more engaged people, how to really rope them in and really further engage them. And I guess those are all just business decisions that you make down the road with this.
Well, I think it's even more fundamental than that. It's who is most engaged and why, right? Mm-hmm. What are the segment drivers that make them the most engaged, right? And all the data exists in all of your different platforms that do it. It's just pulling it out and understanding it. And that's the power of what machine learning does.
Right, and if you're planning a content marketing program, that's golden information to have. Yeah. Hey, so that's one classic example, like you just alluded to. You talked about the funnel and the customer journey and all that, and creating the content that loops people in there. But you talked earlier a little bit about the implications for SEO and I'm a little bit of an SEO nerd as a hobby, and I'm really curious about the implications. Because here's why I asked that. Because the first thing I thought was like, oh my God, Google is completely algorithmically driven. If we all become as customers or as SEOs algorithmically driven, that ever escalating thing that happens is just going to explode. Am I wrong to worry about that, or are there different concerns? Or just tell me about your how you think this will affect how AI stuff will affect SEO.
Yeah, I mean, so I have a theory of how Google specifically is going to handle this, right? So I think that Google is pro customer, right? They are about the best customer experience and finding you the best answer. I would suspect that they will actually implement algorithms that reward AI-based dynamic solutions. Because if you think about it, if you're customizing your website based off of the customer experience, then you are giving them a better answer than what they're finding. So, Google they're not fully automated. They're not fully, they're not 100% AI driven. And, the technology is still in its relatively early stages. They're by far the most advanced AI company out there. So don't get me wrong on that. But the technology is still in its early innings. So they still influence the algorithms. They still influence the rules around SEO rankings. So, my bet is that they're actually going to reward companies that are using advanced technologies. I think it'll be challenging to do that, but I think that you're gonna see that within the next few years. They're already rewarding companies who are faster, who have faster websites, and they're doing significant, ranking improvements if your site is super fast. This guy that I met, he implemented this tool called Gatsby, and basically it just renders your site as plain HTML text, and so it's like the fastest that you can get. There's no code anymore. And what he said was his lame blog increased up to the first page just because of the speed improvements that he made. So, and he didn't have any content on there. So he was like, this is the way of the world.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. But what you said before, I agree with you that because I think Google is most concerned with how well you satisfy the user intent. And if AI is helping to do that, boom, you're golden. It's yeah. And I bet that would be a more important ranking factor than speed. I think speed is one of those tiebreakers. That's my hunch. Anyhow, yeah. So okay, I can see that. Sort of like marketing management, I'm trying to think, like all this data that you have, and you talked about these ability to be more predictive. Are there other sort of more general sort of I'm just thinking like how you can be a smarter manager of content and other resources with all this data that you've got.
Yeah, so I think really that's the challenge, right? So when you look at marketing as the profession, marketers are creative, right? They're creators, they're creative, they're interesting, they're storytellers. And so, kind of with where things have been at, they're forced to become bean counters, right? Where it's like, all right, how many leads did you get? How many sales did you get? How many, how much money did we make off of this campaign? And that is so hard to get to today. You're looking across 10 different systems, pulling it into spreadsheets, trying to figure out what the heck happened, just making crap up when you don't know, right? Like it's spinning a story. But to be fair, they don't have all the data. They don't have all the visibility. So I think, as these platforms, and I'm not the only one working on this, there's, hundreds of companies who are doing the same thing. It's the biggest evolving space in marketing. As these tool sets evolve, their job goes back to more creating the stories and less about trying to understand the data, right? To me, everything that I've seen, every time I've done an analysis, it's like you look at the data and it totally makes sense. Until you see the data, it's like, well, I don't really know what's happening. You see the data and it's like, oh, well, that's what happened. That makes sense to me. And so, with with the change where they're not necessarily doing all this heavy lifting to go understand what's happened, they're told a story with data, then they can use those stories with data to create stories that are going to attract their customers, as opposed to creating stories to go ward off their senior leadership team on why they're not getting more leads, right? Like, oh, we need more money. Well,
Right. Well, that gets into and that kind of gets at this generic issue of like I think everybody who's trying to achieve a business goal with content struggles at some point with tracking back business results to the content they've created and what it's done. Do you see any hope? Because, and you kind of, like you just set out the highest level dynamic there, that it's like trying to quantify every little thing, like that kind of bean counter mentality versus the creative mentality. And I think part of what underlies the creative sort of approach to things is that there is power in storytelling, and that's probably more effective than a lot of data can show. Do you see data coming? Sorry, my light just went here. Do you see data like that can tell you effectiveness of content beyond like those sort of like clicks and other engagement metrics?
yeah. So to me, I think that our mission is to enable you to be able to track ROI on every single post page and tweet, right? So with that type of information, though, it's at a surface level, and then you take the data to the next level, which is, okay, who did it attract, right? Why did it attract them? So really, we create these, customer archetypes or personas on who we're actually targeting. Well, those personas, you can actually tie that back to a real customer in your system. You can actually tie that back to a real person or a real group of people, right? Because we've got similar kind of attributes. And so with that type of information, you can actually go into each type of persona, and then you can say, this type of persona was attracted to this content. This type of persona was attracted to this content. And then you can customize all of your levers based off of what's working for your best customers. So, the arena of personalization is actually going to become transformative in every customer experience here within the next couple of years. This isn't like 10 years away. This is like, months away.
That's it. The way you said that, I'm all of a sudden picturing an intermediate level between like mass marketing and full-on personalization. A lot of what you're talking about, there's that sort of persona-based marketing, but not just in that UX-y kind of way, but in an actual sort of aggregate personality that emerges that you can still target campaigns and things too. Is that an accurate way to think about that?
Yeah, so if you look at like Facebook, right? So Facebook knows more, well, Google and Facebook know more about you than anybody else in the world, right? Like you're on Facebook, you're a foodie, you're a mom, you've got 2 boys, you've got all of these different attributes. You like wine, you like your son's soccer games on Saturdays, right? So you're the soccer mom on Saturdays who works for a marketing firm, right? And so, knowing that information, you as a marketer can actually target that type of person, right? So you can actually create better lookalike audiences, saying, Facebook, go find me these specific types of people, and get very narrow and laser-like focused on who you're targeting, because they match with the types of people that are successful, conversions. And so with kind of that new level of information, you actually have a lot of power on how you're spending your marketing spend, right? So instead of spending, $500 to try to attract 100 people, you can spend $250 to attract the 10 people that are really going to be a close fit, right? So it really optimizes what you're doing, as opposed to kind of the scattershot marketing that most people do. It's kind of the set it and forget it campaign. And then it's like, oh, well, we're burning too much cash. Now we're going to go refresh the campaign. So, you can measure and track those as you're going along and tweak it if it's not working.
Yeah, a lot of what you said seems to be in that realm of like helping you work better and smarter. And hey, I just noticed, Chris, that these always go so quickly. We're coming up on time, but I want to give you one last shot. I give my guests the opportunity. If there's anything last, like anything we haven't talked about content strategy or AI or anything of interest, anything last that you'd like to share with my folks?
Yeah, I think, like I said, AI is really a journey, right? So, you first focus on measuring things, making sure that what you're doing is working, and categorizing your data, because that's what you can use to actually enable your organization. To me, the second level is really personalization. So how are you personalizing your experience across every single, part of your sales funnel? And then the third piece is really kind of, we are around the corner from amazing technologies, like personalized video content. Chatbots are soon to be smart, right? Where you're not going to have to do that much work to go implement those technologies. So I think, the modern marketer is always used to kind of these new tools that are constantly just on the market. Like we've grown from 1,100 MarTech solutions in 2011 to over 10,000 this year, right? And so, you guys are always bombarded with all these solutions that all have their own learning curves and things like that. So the question as a marketer that you should be asking now is, aligned with my content strategy, what are the AI technologies that I should be looking at and evaluating that are going to evolve my game within that strategy? So if you've got a video content strategy, how can you create personalized videos, right? If you've got a dialogue strategy where you're creating conversations with customers on Twitter, right? How can I evolve that strategy and make it smarter? And now is the time to start adopting those technologies, because it's kind of like, if you make a mistake, you can be forgiven, right? But if you're making mistakes 3 years from now when the technology's evolved, it's like, it's going to be disastrous, right?
That's great. Because I'm a late adopter traditionally, but this is one of those places like, yeah, maybe I should go make all my mistakes right now.
Now's the time to make the mistakes. Absolutely. So
cool. Well, thanks so much, Crystal. This is a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed Crystal's insights about how artificial intelligence can help your business's content efforts. In the next episode, I'll talk with Blaine Kylo. Blaine is speaking at Confab next month. He's made some really interesting discoveries about how content governance processes seem to be similar across a variety of different business sectors. I'm really excited to learn more about Blaine's current thinking on content strategy and content governance in particular. As always, I really appreciate it if you can leave your rating or review of this show at iTunes or your favorite podcast store.
Thank you for listening. If you can think of a friend who might enjoy this episode, please share it with them. And please join us again for our next content strategy interview.